I am thrilled to be here. This is my first time in Kansas City, and I'm sorry in advance that my back is always to someone. This is not on purpose. I'm going to try and turn around. But I am happy to be here in Kansas City. It is my first time here. And what I will say is Vote Vets has done an incredible amount of work on this event, on events around the country to highlight, particularly this week with Veterans Day, with that moment yesterday that we all took to think about what our veterans have sacrificed to give us the life that we get to enjoy. I want to thank Les McDonald in particular, wherever he is in the room. He did all the work to organize this event. They are a great team. So thank you, Vote Vets, for what you do. And I am heartbroken that Sharice is not here. Sharice Davids and I ran together in 2018. We were part of that amazing class that ran when we flipped the house the last time. It was the largest class. We were 65 freshmen that year, the youngest class in history, the most diverse, the most women. We had all kinds of firsts in that class. And the reason for me that class was really special, it has the highest number of people who had never run for anything else in their life before they stood up and run in 2018. And Sharice was one of them. And so was Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger and all these people that have been having this great week becoming new governors. So watch the class of 2018 if you want to see who the bench is. That 2018 class is pretty good. Sharice is I don't know Kansas City enough. Are you offended if I say the word badass? She is a badass. Okay, Sharice is a badass. Yeah, I'm sorry. That guy looks offended. You look offended, sir. But I promise I won't swear anymore, but she is. And I got to sit next to her in the Agriculture Committee last year when we were in the House together. And one of the things that's great about her is she's very insightful. She goes right to the point. And she's hilarious. I mean, she really is a funny person. And when Washington is as messy as it is now, and we're going to talk all about it, you need someone that you can look across the table and be like, holy good Lord, did that just happen, right? And Sharice is one of those people for me. So I'm sad that she's not here, but I talked to her on the phone this afternoon, and I vetted the speech with her to make sure it would be up to Kansas City standards. Okay, so we are here at a veterans event. I had the opportunity to meet some of these guys today in a veterans roundtable and just hear from veterans. I'm on the Veterans Affairs Committee and the Armed Services Committee and the Homeland Security Committee and the Agriculture Committee. And so I wanted to hear if the things that I've been hearing in Michigan kind of carry over to the rest of the country, to a place like Kansas. We talked about the economic issues that our veterans are facing, which are very, very similar, but exacerbated for what everyone else is going through in the country. We talked about getting to that next generation of veterans. How do you reach out to them? The 9/11 era and beyond. We talked about mental health issues. And then we also talked about the way that our military is being used in our country, on our streets in places like Chicago. And we're going to talk about that tonight, right? Because it's something so different, so out of the ordinary for our history as a country that literally was founded on the idea that an occupying military power was oppressing our people. So we kicked them out. So to see uniforms in our cities we need to talk about it, right? We need to talk about it. But what I have been doing is trying to go around the Midwest. Okay, so I'm here in Kansas City. I was in Pittsburgh. I was in Wisconsin. We're going to Ohio. Obviously, I'm from Michigan because I am a Democrat, but I think that the Democrats could use a little education about the middle of the country, right? Does that sound right? A little education that there is something between places like New York and California, and actually the Midwest has a lot to teach our party, right? If you're a Democrat. And I will say, to me, when I was thinking about, how do we define the Midwest? What's in it, what's not? I just want to make sure that we officially agree that Kansas City is part of the Midwest, right? Okay, thank you. Yeah, just making sure. This is my quick litmus test on how I know I'm in the Midwest. I wrote it down so I would remember. Number one, sports is our second religion. For some of us, it's our first religion, right? It is what we do. You people understand the art of the tailgate, right? It is totally fine if someone hands you a beer at 10 in the morning, as long as it's game day, right? That's fine. There's nothing weird about that. I got to take Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democrats in the House, to his very first tailgate, Michigan State homecoming, a couple years ago. And I forgot that people don't know how to tailgate. The Midwest understands what a tailgate is. Holiday decor. Who has already taken down their Halloween decor and they now have Thanksgiving decor starting to go, right? It's not quite the same. Right, there we go. She does. I'm wearing my Thanksgiving socks. I have turkeys on my socks. We like to celebrate our holidays. Who is already starting to think about Christmas and has got the Christmas music on? Yep, that's us. We have rivalries inside the Midwest. I have come to learn in just one day the rivalry between Kansas and Missouri, which, good Lord. And we feel how you feel about Missouri is how we feel times 10 about Ohio and Michigan. That is how we feel, Lord. Okay. But as a good Midwesterner, inside the Midwest, we are in deep rivalry. But if you go outside the Midwest, if you're in Washington, D.C., we're all on the same team, right? We're all part of the same family. You're from the Midwest if you have shopped at Bass Pro or Tractor Supply, right? I know you guys know about that. But in a more serious way, you are from the Midwest if you understand that we are a practical people, a reasonable people, a hardworking group of people, salt of the earth. You understand what it's like to live in a red neighborhood, in a purple neighborhood, in a place where people don't see eye to eye politically, right? I live in a red town. I've never won my town. I've never won my precinct. I've never won my neighbors, but they're still the first people I call if they're a problem, right? We understand that the way lots of other people don't. We can't stand the polarization that has taken over our country, right? Is there anyone who's like kind of gritting their teeth and concerned about Thanksgiving dinner because it can get a little uncomfortable because of politics, right? And how infuriating that is. But we also understand that the most important things are the love of family and of faith, our community and hard work, and that there is no contradiction between those things and the love of our country and our willingness to protect our values as Americans, that they are the same thing. So I'm traveling to all these places in the Midwest to elevate the role of the Midwest in our country, to show people what's going on here. Now, last Tuesday, we had a good night, right? We had elections, we had good nights. We had these two great vote vets candidates who are running in now governors of two big states, but we won in all kinds of places. We won in Mississippi. We won in Georgia, right? We won in just places that people weren't expecting us to run. And I want to tell you that for me, the lesson of that election is twofold. The lesson is, number one, economic issues are still the galvanizing issues in our country. It is what people wake up thinking about. They are concerned about the threat to the American dream and whether this country will be there for their kids. And then number two, the second lesson is people are just ready for a new generation of leadership. They are ready for the old to be gone and in with the new. That came across loud and clear. Now, that was a great, moment a week ago, almost a week ago plus. And then we had a harder moment, right? The reason I was flying here and Charisse was flying back to Washington is because we were voting on reopening the government. And a lot of you watched, we had some disappointing moments, right? Because we held out and we fought. We showed, I think, very clearly that the Republican bill, the big, beautiful bill that was passed in July, has precipitated a healthcare crisis in the country, even worse than it was before, and it was already very bad on the price of healthcare. Right now, we are at risk of 23 million Americans losing their health insurance, and we laid bare that there is no plan from them, and they do not give a crap about the cost of healthcare. They will take the money from healthcare and put it into tax breaks for the wealthiest Americans. That was laid bare, right? But the other thing that was laid bare, you watched it, I don't think we have to hide it, that there were disagreements among Democrats on how to end the shutdown, right? There was a debate. And at the end of the day, I voted no on reopening the government because I didn't get anything on healthcare, not a single thing. And I'm, a promise of a vote is not enough for me. It's not enough. And I think, look, I'm a big girl. The Republicans have the White House, the House, and the Senate. I know I'm not going to get everything I want on healthcare, right? Compromise isn't a dirty word. When you're from the Midwest, we know how to work together. But you got to give me something. When I have people in my state, and I'm sure here too, who are calling me saying, I just got a notice of a 600% increase in my healthcare bill. Well, that person's just going to go without healthcare. You know what the answer is. So we had a tough week. And I think the lesson from that tough week, coming on the heels of a really great election night, is that the old way of doing business does not work. The old way of running these institutions is not working for the moment we find ourselves in, and we are not meeting the moment. So what I want to talk about tonight for the rest of the time, and then I want to just open it up to questions, are the issues that I feel like we need to address in order to deal with Donald Trump in the White House, in order to protect the country that we love, in order to keep the values that we hold so dear. We cannot just play defense. We must go on offense. We have to have our own plans, our own ideas, our own Project 2029, right? And for me, I think the idea that we are playing this weak defense as a community that understands sports, has there been ever a team that has won any game by playing defense only? You cannot do it. You have to have your offense. So what I want to walk through very quickly is what I think our offense is, okay, what we can get people around. I was lucky enough to be given the chance to respond to the State of the Union back in March, right? I went on TV. My whole goal was just to not be a Saturday Night Live skit. That was my goal. And I have not been played by anyone on Saturday Night Live. So I feel like, we did okay. But what I said in that speech, in that response, was like, look, we as Americans don't agree on everything, but the average person is really interested in three major things: economic security, physical security, right? You got to be safe in your own home, in your own community. And then we want our democracy to be here for our kids, right? It's not rocket science. And actually, those three things, you could probably get 90% of Americans to say, yeah, I support those things. It's not too hard. But we got to have our own plans on all of those three things. And for me, the economic security issue, what we're here to talk about, and the issues that are hitting particularly veterans so hard right now, is to me, the existential threat to America is the threat to the American dream. That people feel like, holy moly, I thought that if I worked hard and played by the rules, I would do well and my kids would do better. That I could buy my first home and start building some equity, that I could have some security. And whether you're a retiree or a recent college grad or anywhere in between, there's a feeling hanging over the country that American dream may not work anymore. And I'm telling you, if people do not feel like they can get ahead, if they don't feel like they can work hard and succeed, they turn on each other, right? They look for someone to blame. They're unhappy. And in a country that is diverse like ours, they look for someone who doesn't look like them or talk like them or pray like them to blame. And that ain't good. So for me, economic security is everything. And we can talk about national security, we can talk about democracy, but for me, I just want to focus in on the thing that I think most people spend their time thinking about, and that's costs. Most people don't know all the ins and outs of policy in Washington, but they know their own pocketbook. They know their own bills, and they know how much they save every month. So let's just do a quick little experiment, okay? Particularly since Donald Trump said that he was going to lower your costs. Just raise your hand if in the past 11 months, the cost of your food and restaurant bills has gone up. Just raise your hand, okay? Raise your hand if your energy and electricity bills in the last 11 months have gone up. Raise your hand if the cost of housing in the last 11 months, if someone's been looking for a rental or for a place to buy, has housing in your life gone up? Okay. Raise your hand if your health care in the last 11 months has it's gone up or you've been notified that it's going up for next year. Okay. And then let's just, for those of you who have kids and grandkids, was back to school shopping more expensive this year than a year ago? I mean, good Lord, the trapper keepers or whatever they call them now. I'm old, And then do we think we're going to have a more expensive Christmas this year than we did a year ago? Raise your hand. Okay. Now I'm an objective person. I will say openly, from my counting, gas bills, price of gas has gone down in the past 11 months. But to my knowledge, that is the only category in our country where costs have gone down. Everything else has gone up in our lives. And Trump's fundamental value proposition that he ran on was he was going to lower your costs. Right? I don't know if you had the flurry of activity the way we did in Michigan, the signs everywhere, the ads, millions of dollars on TV. That was his signature issue. Vote for him, even if you have to kind of hold your nose, because he's going to put more money in your pocket. Raise your hand if 11 months later, any of you have more money in your pocket. And I'm thrilled if someone does. Please, there's maybe someone who's there we go, that guy, he's got it. Okay, good. I'm happy for you. There we go. Good. The stock market, right? She says, if you're heavily invested in the stock market, you're doing pretty well. But that's not the average person in the United States. That's not the average American. So for me, just the drama every single day that Trump produces, right? That constant barrage of information is designed to distract you from the experiment we just did, that your costs are going up. He doesn't want to have accountability that that under him, the prices have gone up. So two things we can do. That part of my Project 2029. Okay. Number one, declare a housing emergency. The man has declared an emergency on everything else. Okay. We have a national emergency right now against Canada. Okay. That's where we used to go. In Michigan, we just drive over the border to go drink. Now, when we were 19, right? I mean, the Canadians, God love them, they're not a threat to our national security. We don't need a national emergency against the Canadians. That's insane. But it has become increasingly difficult to buy your first home. And what is more fundamental to the American dream than buying a home, than having property? So for me, you declare a housing emergency, you surge in, you flood the market with building materials because it's very expensive to build a home right now. Our home builders are not building as many single family homes. We're down 4 million units of housing. That's how many we're short. And then when you declare that national emergency, you basically sweep away a bunch of red tape that is making it harder, more laborious, and more expensive to build a home. right? And I'm not talking about the government giving everybody a home. We're a capitalist country. That's not how we work. I'm talking about our builders being able to quickly build a bunch of single family homes that people can afford. So you want to declare an emergency, Donald Trump? Don't do it on Canada. Do it on housing, because nothing is more fundamental to being Americans. And then number 2, on healthcare. Look, we had this debate this past week about extending tax credits for Obamacare. No one would ever say Obamacare is perfect. Let's not pretend that it's the end-all be-all of healthcare, right? It's a Band-Aid on a system that we know in our hearts isn't working. I have never seen a system that everyone in the system feels like it's broken. The nurses, the doctors, the patients, the middlemen, the people at the pharmacists. Is there anyone who feels like that system is meeting the needs of the country? So while we're talking about Band-Aids today, for me, if we're looking at a Project 2029, I believe in my heart we need a competitive public insurance option, right? For anyone at any age, that if you can get your employer provided insurance. I believe in choice. I don't want to make everyone, have to do the same thing. You want to get that Blue Cross through your employer, you do that. But there's always a public insurance option that works, whether you're in Kansas or Michigan or go on vacation in Florida or whatever. It works throughout the country, that is low cost, reasonable, and gives you good care, including preventive care. That's what I think we need as a country. And this idea of Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid is not working. And it's certainly not working to strip more people of their insurance, more people from getting access to care. Okay? So to me, Democrats, at the end of the day, and this is why I'm so glad to be doing this in front of veterans and doing this at a veteran town hall. Democrats, if we are going to deal with the onslaught from the White House, need to A, have a plan, and B, get a little more alpha energy into our leadership. Okay? A little more alpha energy. And our veterans understand what this is, right? The military is the best leadership training in the world. I got to work alongside the military my entire career. It is a place that values leaders who stand up, who realize a threat, adapt and change, and go on offense, right? And that is what I think the Democratic Party needs a whole lot more of, that alpha energy. Because I don't think right now the divide in the Democratic Party is progressive versus moderate, right? That debate always rages online. People always talk about that. Well, is it that we had Mr. Mamdani, or is it that we had Abigail Spanberger? Or no, it's not progressive versus moderate. It's, do you believe in fighting or running? Those are the only two things that divide leaders right now. And that generation that's coming up, that kind of came into politics when Trump was elected, we believe in the fight, because it is fighting on behalf of the things we love and on the democracy that many of us swore an oath to the Constitution to protect. So I am looking for friends and allies, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, right? And I think that was the message of the last Tuesday. Like, what works in Manhattan doesn't work in Kansas or Virginia, and that's okay. That's okay. But we got to work together as a team, right? Just the way the military does, right? You have different specialties. You have coordination. Air power is different than logistics, which is different than infantry. And that's how you go and retake a city from a terrorist. But we got to be on the same team. So all I will tell you is, you have a fighter in Sharice Davids. She is amazing, and I've watched her do it. For our local elected officials and those thinking about running, please get in the fight. We need that new generation to come into it. Running for office is a crazy thing to do sometime, but we need good people to get in it and who are ready to fight. And even though I am not your senator and I come from a different corner of the Midwest, I want to thank you for being engaged citizens, for caring about your country and your community. Every single time that this nation has gone through a hard moment, It's always gotten out of it with two things, always, whether it's civil war, right? Americans killing each other across a battlefield, or the McCarthy era and communism, depression, the depression. How about the civil rights movement, where people are shooting water cannons at American citizens? Every single time we have gotten through those chapters in our history, and we will get through this one with two things: engaged citizens and principled leaders. Every single time. People like you, citizens, just do a little bit more than they're used to doing. They show up, they get involved, they protest, they call their elected officials, they demand more accountability. And then there are principled leaders ready to receive the ball and do something about it. So just by being here, you are engaged citizens. Thank you for that. And all the way from Michigan, you have my commitment. I will do everything in my power to be the principled leader that you deserve. So thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for coming out. And we'll turn to our questions.
My name is George. My name is George Hanna. This isn't on.
Get you a mic that works. Can I toss you this mic?
My name is George Hanna, and I am a three-term chair for the Kansas Democratic Veterans Caucus. I have got some. Thank you. I have some constituents that are active duty National Guard. They are from Puerto Rico, and they are troubled with the ramifications of being called up into what's seems to be going towards a police state and enforcing these laws that they know are unconstitutional. Now, everybody in here is a veteran that took the oath and said they don't have to follow an unlawful order, but obviously actions have consequences, and they're deeply concerned about what's going to happen if they do push back on what they know is unconstitutional. Second part of the question is what are we going to do about it? Everybody here is a proud American. Everybody here is a veteran, fought against nationalism, and I fear that we are dipping our toes in that direction.
Thank you for the question. So, especially because we're in front of a veteran audience, I think what we are witnessing is a fundamental shift in how a president uses military force inside of America. Now, we can have a whole conversation about what's going on in the Caribbean and some of the things that are happening there outside our norms. But to me, one of the most fundamental things that we as Americans should be concerned about from this president, right? It's not buying Greenland. It's the deployment of uniformed guard and potentially active duty military into our streets. Now, you've all seen the videos coming out of Chicago and Portland and all these other places. We have federal law enforcement there, and we have, in some cases, National Guard. To me, there is nothing more contrary to American values than to have uniformed military who are trained, everyone here, trained to go after foreign adversaries, to then turn their gaze towards their own fellow citizens and set up a dynamic where the citizens are the enemy. I think that is deeply dangerous for democracy. I think it's one of those things that, you try to figure out what President Trump is doing, what are the sort of passing and tactical and ephemeral things, and what are the truly strategic and irreversible things that he is doing, and it's the use of our military in that way. National Guard, sometimes from one state to another against the will of the governor, right? Right now, he has tried to send a total of about 7,000 uniforms all over the country based on this pretext that these places can't handle their own situations and need to have someone sent in. He has also floated using the Insurrection Act. And just so we're all clear, the Insurrection Act allows active duty uniformed military like the 82nd Airborne to take on the roles of law enforcement, surveillance, arrest, detention. And I think about the military and what an critical institution it is, and how it has some of the highest approval ratings and trust ratings from any institute, more than any other institution in the country. And the idea that children in suburban Chicago would start to look at uniformed military as an enemy scares the crap out of me. Scares the crap out of me. So to me, this is one of the most egregious things that he has done. In a perfect world, the House and Senate would absolutely be crawling out of their skin to push back on the president on these deployments that he's organized. Unfortunately, they are not standing up for those values, right? Maybe unless it comes to their own town, they're not going to stand up. So I went ahead and wrote a piece of legislation called the No Troops in Our Streets Act that basically says Congress should immediately have the ability to vote down any deployment that happens against the will of the governor, right? A governor invites someone in, that's a different situation. But if a governor and the local people do not want uniformed military, Congress has the ability to stop that dead in its tracks. That, to me, is the most important thing we can do. But I think it's important to address the morale issue, right? There is a real morale problem, particularly among young officers, young enlisted, who are wondering, number one, am I going to be sent on one of these deployments? Am I going to be asked to do something that I believe violates my oath of office, any legal order, as you say? And then number two, I got to be honest, if you're a woman in the military, if you're a person of color in the military, you're looking at the purging of all these top officers and you're saying, do I have a future here? You know, my own former staff asking me, like, I wanted to be an admiral. I've been in the Navy 7 years. Do you really think I could ever get there now? Or are they just going to think that I was given some role for DEI, right? So that to me, if I can speak to the folks who are still in uniform, number one, there is such a thing as an illegal order. You take an oath to the Constitution, not to a king and not to any one president, but to the document of the Constitution and the laws that it upholds. And lastly, I will just say that the veterans, I know here, but across the country, are watching this like hawks. Because veterans understand what it means better than anybody to have uniformed military deployed in our streets. They understand how different that is from anything they were ever trained to do. And as some of us were talking earlier, that impulse to jump in front of the truck and say, you're not going to ruin and spoil the reputation of the military because one man wants to look like a tough authoritarian leader. So our veterans have a special role in speaking out. It doesn't have to be partisan. I would never ask someone to get partisan on something, but it does have to speak clearly of the values that you were taught, that you upholded, that you risked your life for. So our veterans have a strong role to play. And the next couple of weeks, now that the government shutdown is ending, a number of service and veteran folks elected in office are going to be putting on these hearings and these events to highlight the deployment of uniformed military in the United States, because it's one of the most existential problems we have right now. Thank you. There we go.
Hello, Senator.
Hi there.
Thank you for being here this evening.
course.
So, as a small business owner, partner in a law firm, I like to hear you talking about the cost of healthcare and affordability. But specifically from my role, my law firm was faced with the choice of continuing to keep people hired, which we absolutely want to do, and being able to provide healthcare to our employees. Healthcare affordability, unfortunately, was cost prohibitive to our firm, and we could not provide that healthcare. We were able to find a concierge service, but it provides limited coverage and can't fill that gap. So I'd just like to hear a little more of your thoughts on healthcare, bringing affordability down, and not just how it applies to individuals, but also to small businesses being able to provide that to their employees.
Yeah. Right now, the average cost of healthcare for a family of 4 in the United States is $26,000 a year, okay? Think of the average person and how much they make. $26,000 a year is a huge chunk of change. And depending on your insurance, maybe your employer pays some of that, but that is some of the most expensive healthcare in the world. And I think it would be somewhat more understandable if we had the best health outcomes in the world. If we had the healthiest society and we were living to 110, all of us, and looking at other countries and saying, oh, well, they don't pay as much, but they don't live as long and they don't have as healthy of lives. That's not what we have. We have middling numbers of success, right? No, right. This lady next to you is like, no, it's down, right? But so when you rack and stack against what we pay, it's absurd. And you have these terrible moments, like we saw this poor man, like CEO, who was killed on the streets of New York, and people celebrated it. And it was a terrible thing to celebrate someone's death. But what was behind it was that every American I know has some sort of just traumatic story dealing with the healthcare system, not being able to get care, not being able to get coverage for someone with a pre-existing condition, not being able to like help their loved ones through something. And I think that for that reason, healthcare is a personal issue. It's more personal than our electricity bills, right? Because it's about the life of our kids and how long we're going to live. This is why I've never seen a system more broken, and I don't believe that a system of Band-Aids is actually the way to go. We've been trying, and I will say, Democrats have been trying to do something on healthcare. We passed Obamacare. We've tried to reform it. We're the ones pushing for some sort of affordability. But I say that in the same breath that I say to you, the way we're doing it doesn't work, and we must come up with a different system. And it's before my time, but I can only imagine what it was like in FDR's time when you worked your whole life, worked your body to the bone to the point of not being able to work, and then died in poverty because there was no safety net for retirees, right? You could never retire. That was something that was broken. And so they designed a system that worked. And, you know, people can say what they want about Medicare and Social Security, but most of us feel like they work pretty well. So that's what I'm asking for, is that we sort of have imagination to think of something different so that your staff at your firm, you know, if you guys don't offer a healthcare plan, there's a reliable option no matter what they do in their life. They can get it. And that, to me, the public insurance option is the way to go, because Americans also want choice, right? There's some people who think, no, we go to a system where everyone has the same thing. It's an option. But I think Americans like choice. And some people are going to want that Blue Cross Blue Shield. They're going to want that. So to me, it's fundamental. I will also say part of the astronomical costs in our healthcare system is I told you I wasn't going to swear, really, really bad system around prescription drugs. It's insane. It's insane. And again, no other country in the world. And I live on the border with Canada. So you can imagine how many Michiganders just get their prescriptions from Canadian pharmacies. I mean, it's like a complete standard thing that we do, right? So until we reform those systems, we're not going to be able to have a law firm feeling good about being able to afford their insurance for their employer or employees. And that, to me, takes some wholesale change. And the side that lays out a real plan, not a fake plan, not a talking point plan, but a real plan to transform healthcare and prescription drug pricing is the team that's going to win in election after election after election. You have to do it. But that, to me, is a fundamental issue of American society, and public insurance option and prescription drug pricing is a must do. Okay. I'm looking for my vote bets, folks. There we go. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Part of the issue that you're talking about healthcare and a lot of other similar issues in America has to do with money. Yeah. And that is corporations and rich folk have money to basically get their issues out there, you know, that they can talk with the senators or the representatives because, hey, you know, Elon Musk, $250 million towards Trump's campaign. That money talks. Do you see any hope for limiting the money that's, you know, so that the issues get, for the poor, the middle class, and the rich, instead of just the rich. Because, healthcare, it's all about money. It's like the insurance companies, the everybody that has a dog in the fight that is making money off of our healthcare insurance at our expense, is lobbying Congress to say we want it to stay the way it is.
So 100%.
Thank you.
So you couldn't make up a worse campaign finance system than the one we have in the United States. You couldn't make one up. It's a Frankenstein. It's out of control Frankenstein. And court decision after court decision have made it worse and have made it worse. But you're absolutely right that big interests have their lobbying firms and they come to see you, right? When I was first elected, here come people to my office knocking on my door. And what you realize very quickly is that the middle class has no lobbyist. The middle class in America has no big fancy firm coming to knock on your door and demand that things work for them. And that it is exacerbated, if I can be frank, by the system we have on corporate PAC money. Now, I come from Michigan, but I was very, very happy very early on to swear off and never take a dime of corporate PAC money because I never wanted you to wonder how I was voting and why, right? I never wanted you to say, why is she pushing back on this bill? Is it because she takes a lot of money from the healthcare industry? Why isn't she doing X, Y, and Z? So you can demand accountability from your elected officials and encourage them not to take corporate PAC money. That's number one. Number two, we got to have a system where the average American gets a voice in Congress. And the way that I see that playing out is your elected officials have to come in front of you and talk to you. Okay? It is, right? And demanding that there's some sort of feedback loop, right? We know I'm sure there's people here who call their senators, call their Congress people, put in, and I encourage you to do that. I get a report regularly, at least weekly, if not daily, on what the calls are all saying. But invite them to your meeting, invite them to your event. Some of them are scared of town halls, right? They're okay. So then invite them to the Kansas City Library Board Coalition event. I mean, people, get creative and invite them to something, especially a veterans event. Let them come in front of our veterans. They certainly talk about our veterans enough. They certainly talk about how they're a champion for veterans. Organize an event and then talk about veteran affordability. That wouldn't be crazy. But I think to me, the system has gotten deeply out of whack because of corporate PAC money and the amount of money these companies have to throw around. Now, it was interesting when I wouldn't take corporate PAC money. I had one of the big box stores, one of the big stores I'm sure you all shop at from time to time, came to me and they were very kind of snippy with me. And they said, you didn't take our check during your first election. And I said, I know I don't take corporate PAC money. And they said, well, we don't know how to talk to you. And I said, you have 900 jobs in my district. I'll talk to anyone with 900 jobs in my district. Just ask me. You don't have to pay me to get into my office, right? So the whole system is broken. But I encourage you to push people to reject corporate PAC money and to get in front of human beings every single week when they are back from Washington to hear that feedback loop, or else they get insulated and isolated and they're listening only to their lobbyist friends. Yeah. Okay. I got the guy with the mic. I'm looking at my vote vets right over here. I'm going as directed.
Sorry. Good evening, Senator. My name is Sarah Gosvener. I'm an
Hold on, the mic isn't working. Just one sec. Shall I throw you this one again?
Good evening, Senator. My name is Sarah Gosviner. I'm an Army veteran of 10 years with 4 combat tours, 2 being to Iraq and 2 to Afghanistan. I'm also a trans woman. A study found that 1 in 5 transgender adults, approximately 20% as a veteran. We've watched you vote for bills that have anti-trans amendments in them targeting trans service members and their families, including the most recent NDAA. You're asking us to trust you with the economy and democracy. As a minority American veteran with very little influence on elections, here's my question. If a minority veteran cannot trust you with the vote to maintain our health care benefits and rights, how are we to trust you with our best interests at heart with the economy and will not vote what is most politically expedient in throwing us under the proverbial bus?
So thank you for the question. Look, I think all I can tell you, first of all, I grew up in a gay home. My mom came out in 1986. We hid it. And I got all the way through high school without anyone knowing. My youngest brother, made it through senior year when his ex-girlfriend told the whole school because she was mad about the breakup, right? It was a different era. For me, there is no other way that we get through an all-military force or an all-volunteer force and a force that represents America without inviting everyone into that force. And what we've seen over the last year is the president make radical change on decisions about trans soldiers that I was a part of when I was at the Pentagon, right? I was there as an assistant secretary of defense when decisions were being made to allow trans soldiers, Marines, the whole span, be equal members of the force, out and proud, and to deal with those issues of healthcare, right? Provide adequate healthcare for people. This year's NDAA is $1 trillion budget. That's the Pentagon's budget. It has, I think, 2,000 pages. I'm going to have to go back and understand specifically which provision you're talking about. But all I can tell you is that my office has been doing casework for people who have been fired and relieved of duty at the Pentagon, trans JAG officers, to try and help them deal with what's going on and then get them placed in a job that gives them some dignity and some ability to live. So I don't know specifically what you're talking about, but I will just tell you that for me, just given my personal history, LGBTQ issues are fundamental to who I am. They're fundamental to who we are as a country. And I'm happy to talk with you offline about the specifics of the provision. Okay? Coming to you. Can we get to someone right in the middle? Yeah. Oh, sorry. She's trying.
Hello. Go blue.
Oh, go blue, go green, the whole thing. Oh my God, there's a few of you here, these Michiganders. Look at this.
Is there a particular reason that you don't support universal health care? It seems to me that because as Americans, we prefer to have choice. Given the chaos we're dealing with now, that's not sufficient. We're the only developed country in the world, is that correct, that does not provide universal health care?
Or some option, yes.
So when you're talking about changing the system to allow basically Obamacare in a massaged form,
no,
is that going to be enough?
Yeah, no, not Obamacare. So first of all, I do believe in universal health care. Every American deserves access to care they can afford, period. And it was, for me, I went through this with my mother. My parents are divorced. My mom was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer, and she had let her healthcare lapse. Okay. So part of the reason I'm here as an elected official is because of all the things that I went through in places like Iraq and all the difficult things. Nothing was worse than the first 6 weeks of getting her terminal diagnosis and her having no health care. And before Obamacare, imperfect as it is, number one reason for bankruptcy in America was medical debt, which is absurd. So I do believe in universal health care, everyone having access. That doesn't mean Medicare for all, that's the only system that's available. There are countries that have the public insurance option that everyone has access to, but that have choice on a private insurance option. Place like Australia, okay? You can choose. And the average person chooses the public option. And by the way, the people who will choose the public option first are the youngest, healthiest, just getting started Americans who don't want the Blue Cross, who think they're going to live forever anyways. And so they get the public option. That's great for making the math work. But to me, there's always that net there. There's always that program. So if you want to move, and Obamacare right now is not that. Obamacare is different in Kansas than it is in Michigan, right? You can't, if you want to go for a month to Arizona, you're not going to get covered because you got some other, that doesn't make sense for the lives we lead now. A public insurance option, one option that's accepted everywhere in the country, is what I'm talking about. But I'm not going to say, I'm just not prepared to say that every American has to be on that plan. And that to me is the only difference. And it's a difference of not much distinction. But Americans, our system is set up for competition, for choice. And that public insurance option is going to be the best value, the best insurance for the dollar, and create pressure on those private insurance companies that are now charging exorbitant rates. And so to me, I understand the point, and there's lots of people who have that view, but for me, I got to leave that choice in there because, as you may have noticed, we have a pretty diverse country that feels differently about this issue. So public insurance option with the option to do something else is the way to get to universal health care. Let me turn my back over here.
Hello, my name is Jay Moyer. I am a proud member of the Johnson County Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coalition, and I also sit on the executive committee representing Kansas 3rd Congressional District for Kansas Young Democrats. I wanted to talk a little bit about the rising cost of healthcare. It seems to me, I'm 26, I'm a proud member of Generation Z, and it seems sometimes like we can't even ask for help with rent or with, housing, much less ask our friends for like $20 for gas. According to data from the American Community Survey, in the Kansas City area, there have been 3,442 eviction filings in the past month, which is 35% higher than last year. 28,846 year-to-date filings, which is 3% higher than last year, and 37,839 eviction filings over the past 12 months. Is there something that Congress can do to make sure that the cost of housing goes down despite Republicans holding the House, the Senate, and Donald Trump clearly not caring about this issue?
Yeah. So you're right that it is tough when you don't have people who care about this issue. He ran on this issue, but he doesn't care about the cost of housing enough to, as I said, do something basic like declare a housing emergency. Leave Canada alone and declare a housing emergency, because the reason the price of housing is gone up and up and up, especially you've probably noticed since COVID, right? It really kicked in right around COVID, is we have a supply and demand problem. We've got too much demand and not enough supply, so the landlords and the house people selling their homes can drive a really big price for those properties. And you're kind of stuck because you got to have somewhere to live. And so you're getting together with friends at your age and roommates and doing as much as economizing as you can. Right now, if you ask the average home builder around the country, they'll say, you know what, we'll build apartment buildings because that's okay, or McMansions, like the really big houses, because both of those will make money. But it's just not a money-making exercise for us to build single-family homes, right? Smaller homes, for a family of 4. So you got to get inside that loop and spur a massive, massive explosion in housing. And the way that you do that is, again, 2 things. Local regulations and red tape are absolutely holding us back. I can't speak for Kansas City specifically. I can speak for a lot of communities around the country, especially in Michigan, where it's like, not in my backyard. I don't want that over here. Well, it's got to have 2 elevators, not 1. It's got to do this. It's got to do that. And so they'll just say it's not worth it. And then the cost of things like lumber, right? Construction materials is super inflated and expensive. So they're like, I'm not going to do a single family home. You could use the Defense Production Act and use the purchasing power of the government to surge in building materials to lower the cost of things like lumber, so that they're just building. That to me, look, there's other ideas out there. There are a lot of people who have second homes and third homes, while others have not even their first. If you're able to buy a second home, maybe you should pay a little bit of a second home tax. It wouldn't kill us. But the point is, we have to do something to kickstart that housing explosion, or else people like you, especially at your age, are going to have to make compromise after compromise in order to live independently. When your parents were your age, they were probably thinking about buying their first home. Maybe they had bought their first home. The average age in the United States of America right now to buy your first home is 40. Yeah, right. Boo is right. That's bad. How many people have already had kids? They're not building that equity over a lifetime. So housing explosion is what we need. We're down 4 million units. Housing emergency needs to be declared. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Hi, I'm Paula George. I work in early child care across 9 counties in the state of Kansas. Hold on, I'm going to get my question back up here. How can we address how state and federal budgets can support those currently working in the field of early childhood? We need help to sustain our centers and family home providers so we can pay employees higher wages, provide adequate employee benefits, health insurance, retirement, and scholarships to increase opportunities for education and training. How will you help us relieve the stress facing the childcare industry and the stress of the cost of care for the families we serve?
Yeah, thank you for asking, and thank you for being in childcare, especially anyone who's in childcare or teaching since COVID, through COVID and since COVID. Thank you for doing that. I'm sorry, I want to ask a question. Do we have universal childcare or universal pre-K in Kansas? No. Okay, we should. We should. We have the conundrum of, again, not enough childcare for people who need it, right? The childcare often becomes very expensive for a family. So a lot of people, particularly women, say, oh, it's so expensive. My job covers it, but barely, so I'm just not going to work, right? I'm going to stay home. But then the people who work in childcare, is not like they're getting rich, quite the opposite, right? They're not taking that money and becoming a millionaire off being a teacher in a childcare center. So again, you have a supply and demand problem. You look at other examples around the world, and people handle universal childcare, universal pre-K, starting even younger than pre-K, and it is part of the society. It's part of the way that we grow people, and the state helps ensure that we control costs so that it's not more than 15% of your annual budget. We had a bill a couple of years ago when Biden was president to deal with childcare. Wouldn't have been perfect. Nothing's perfect. No single piece of legislation is perfect. But it would have at least laid out the mandate and said people's healthcare costs have to be capped, and people working in healthcare have to be paid not just a living wage, but a good wage. We got it through the House. It did not make it through the Senate. But that is what we need, I think, to deal with health, with childcare in the country. And when you think about education, right, there's nothing more critical to our kids succeeding than early childhood education. It should be just a standard thing. So there are lots of meaty pieces of legislation that get at this. It's all about the will. It's all about the will. And I think, again, to bring it back to something particularly our veterans understand, the way you spend your money is how we know your priorities as a family and as a country. Many of us who have served overseas have seen the choices that other countries and other leaders have made about what to spend money on, right? I worked out of Saddam Hussein's palace. That became my office when I was in my 3 tours in Iraq. I understood what that man was spending his money on, right? Marble and murals to himself. And, I already know what the commentary is. I'm sorry. I walked into that one. I will reiterate, you can tell someone's priorities by what they spend their money on, especially in their own home. But for me, I think one of the things that unites people right now is that they feel like we spent a lot of money abroad, right? And we weren't doing the investment we needed at home. And given where technology is going, where places like China are going and kind of leaping ahead of us, for all those reasons, but also for the domestic reasons, investing in ourselves and in our kids and in our education is the most fundamental thing we can do to be a leader into the 21st century. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Senator. Thank you for coming. My name's Dave Coleman. I'm in Leawood. Number one, I want to compliment you on your outfit.
Oh, well, hello. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but you are now a Chiefs fan since you are wearing red.
I knew this was going to happen. I walked into that one too,
It's not Red Friday just yet, but we're soon you're going to be away on Red Friday, so thank you. 2 questions. Number one, with the Pentagon, you're on armed services. Yep. We just had, as of yesterday, a big case in more of Western Kansas where a paper was, the police went into the paper.
Yes, I saw that. I read that today.
And the county settled finally with that yesterday, which made me think about the Pentagon with the Secretary of Defense not kicking out, but making all the press sign a pledge.
Yes.
In what they could do. And I'm very interested in seeing what the fallout has been amongst the senators, that your colleagues, and what the talk is on that. And then my second question, more importantly, if Saturday Night Live were to parody you, what actress would you want to play you?
Okay. Those are 2 very different questions. And I want to say for the record that, yes, I'm wearing red. I'm not willing to say it's for the Chiefs, but I am willing to say that part of why I come out and do these kinds of things is because I'm not going to let the other side of the aisle own the flag or own patriotism, own red, white, and blue. As far as I'm concerned, they have no claim left on that patriotism when they are watching our Constitution be steamrolled by Donald Trump and saying nothing. So that's the red. On kicking out the press corps, you're right that the Secretary of Defense said after, decades and decades of having the Pentagon press corps sit inside the Pentagon in a press area. They're in a special area, and being able to be at press conferences and events and cover this huge part of our lives as Americans. He didn't like the coverage he was getting. He didn't like some of the stories that came out about him. And so he said, you either sign this basically sort of a loyalty pledge, or else you're going to be kicked out. And they all walked out en masse, with the exception of a few of them, which takes a lot. That's brave of them. And I don't know how to say this any other way. There wasn't fallout from that decision. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle, some of whom behind closed doors will complain to me bitterly and lament the decisions that are coming out of the White House or out of the Pentagon in this case, will say nothing, have said nothing. And again, we're in a veterans town hall. Veterans understand leadership more than anyone because it's about being led. And sometimes you have a great, platoon leader, and sometimes you have a terrible one, but you see leadership up close. Leadership is not about what you say behind closed doors. It's about what you do in front of the public to defend your government, your country. And on that score, they haven't done anything. But what has been interesting is that something about that decision inspired a lot more people from inside the Pentagon and in uniform on active duty to talk to the press. And there are stories out there, including on the deployment of military inside the United States, what's going on in the Caribbean, a list of, Trump, no one seemed to notice it, but Trump issued an executive order in September asking the Department of Justice to come up with a list of domestic terrorist organizations and then use the full weight of the federal government to target those organizations. What? And his definition of a domestic terrorist organization was organizations that had different views of Christianity, views of the family, not necessarily even violent, right? So when I see things like that, and I see stories coming from within the government on that to me is the consequence of the press corps being kicked out. People are more ready than ever to talk about these things. So my Republican colleagues fell down on the job big time on this and so many other things. But the public and people in uniform have responded by providing more information that, frankly, I use every single day in learning what's going on the Pentagon. Yeah. And on Saturday Night Live, I don't know. Just, I just don't, you never want, as a politician, you just don't want to be covered by Saturday Night Live. It's never, it's never the Sarah Palin thing. Like, you never want to be, but if it had to be someone, I would be thrilled if Tina Fey would cover me. Yeah. Okay. Who am I going to? Yes.
Senator, I think we have time for one more question.
Oh, thank you.
One more question.
Yes, sir. Oh, let's do it again. That mic just does
There we
not
go.
like.
Here we go.
Okay.
Hi, Senator. My name is Jordan Herrera, and I have been running for United States Congress in Missouri's 5th Congressional District,
Great.
the very district that Donald Trump is wiping off of the map, or trying to. We're fighting like hell in Missouri,
Yes.
and I'm hopeful.
Yep.
But, thank you. But I'm a product of political wins, and I've been pushed into Missouri's 4th. I want to announce and say I'm committed to running in Missouri's 4th, that we're not going to let the Republicans take any ground in the state of Missouri, and I'll be challenging Mark Alford. But my point is this. My question is this. To veterans who are listening and veterans around the country who are doing, or maybe they're scared about doing exactly what I'm doing right now, standing up and running, what do you have to say to us to inspire us to win and to succeed in Congress as freshmen next year?
Yeah. Okay. Well, vote vets. So, look, we saw it last Tuesday night. I feel it all the time when I'm winning, in very tough races myself. And this last election I was the closest Senate race in the country. When you have held your hand up and sworn an oath to protect and defend the Constitution and put your life on the line to do that, people trust you more than the average politician, because they say to themselves, like, okay, they could be doing something else. They could be, going into the private sector, doing all these other things. But this is someone who loves America, who believes in the principles of our country, and is willing to go again into service to try and defend those values in a different way. And so I think veterans around the country running is the best possible thing we can say for our country, for the Democratic Party, and for everything in between. And I will say the veterans, once you're in, those are the ones, frankly, on both sides of the aisle that work well together. They understand how to talk to each other. It just kind of works, right? We understand the mission. So I encourage you. I encourage anyone thinking of running. We have this problem where people think, well, if I'm going to run, I don't know how to do it. I had no idea what I was doing in 2018, but I promise you, given your military service, you understand what it means to build a campaign, to have a plan, to be strategic and to execute. And that is what we need from Democrats. We don't need more like ride along, get along Democrats. We just don't. We don't. So I encourage you and any other veterans, and Vote Vets will teach you how to do it. Okay. Thank you. I think that was my last question. I'm looking. Thank you. That's very nice. But I'm glad you didn't have the mic for that one. Thank you. All I would say is thank you. I know for many of you, you stand up for democracy in communities where sometimes that's really hard. I understand what it's like to be a little blue speck in your town or you're on your street. In my first campaign, we had people knocking on doors, and some people would come to the door and be like, I'm neighborhood. And we'd be like, that's what the woman 5 doors down just said. Like, you really need to meet each other, So I understand what that's like. It is easy to stand up and use your voice in a place like New York City or California. It is much harder to do it in a place like Kansas, and I thank you for standing up. And I want to just leave you on a positive note, okay? Because I do think we're going to get through this. This is not the end. And for those from the Navy, you don't give up the ship, okay? People have worked too hard to get us to this point. I am a female senator, okay? We worked for 100 years for women to get the right to vote. I don't have the right, and neither do you, to sit down and not fight for the next generation. We don't have the right. Now, it's okay to be tired. It's okay to take a diet, have a little diet from media, right? It's okay to put down your phones. It's okay to just focus on your family for a little while, but you can't leave it forever. You can't leave it forever because too many people work too hard to get us to this place, and we are not going to let the other folks on the other side of these issues win. We're not going to roll over. That's what they want. That is what they want. So thank you for caring about your country. Thank you for caring about your community. Thank you for pushing and prodding on your leaders, even me, right? Give me hell. That's what we're here for. That's the job, right? And thank you for helping us bridge to what is going to be a better time in our country. We just got to get our crap together to do that. Right? That is what we're going to do. Thank you. Have a great rest of the night.